Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's Life Sciences lesson. My name is Fauzi Rahman, and this lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center. There is a WhatsApp line which you can WhatsApp if you want any questions answered during the presentation, and that number is 079 454 9535. I'll repeat 079 454 9535. Right, so today's lesson we are going to discuss the types of evidence or the lines of evidence for human evolution. Let's kick off the presentation with our all-important exam guidelines. Remember, we are reiterating that you start off with this important document every single time you start studying, right? To see what is important, what you need to know, and do I know this before you write any test or exam. Right, so we are going to look here at the lines of evidence that support the idea of common ancestors for living hominids, including humans. Then we're going to look at the fossil evidence here. That's evidence from fossils of different ages and show the anatomical, that is the structural characteristics of organisms and how they change gradually over time. We're going to emphasize on evolutionary trends provided by these anatomical features of fossils of these three genera here, Ardipithecus, Australopithecus, and the Homo genus. We're going to look at the age of fossils and a timeline for the existence of the three genera and the fossil sites where they were found, emphasis on the fossil sites that form part of the cradle of humankind, which is in South Africa, and the scientists who discovered them. My colleague Sina Sekeke, she will take you through genetic evidence, cultural evidence, and the out of Africa hypothesis. Okay, so let's look now at fossil evidence. So these are the three main types of evidence that is used to explain human evolution. This evidence indicates that hominids may have shared a common ancestor. Right, so I'm looking at the fossil evidence. Anatomical or structural features of fossils are examined, compared, and placed in a sequence from the most simple to the most complex. Then we're going to look at the transitional species. Transitional species are those that display characteristics in between those that it follows and those that it precedes. Transitional species may also share some characteristics with each group, with each of these two groups. So let's look at the transitional species. A transitional species shows intermediate characteristics between two species or genera. It has characteristics common to both the ancestor species and the descendant species that follows. So if you look at this transitional species here that is ringed in blue, that is called Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx is known as a transitional species because it has characteristics of the dinosaur, right? The ancestor species, and it has wings, and it was a dinosaur, characteristics of a bird, a dinosaur that could fly. So it has characteristics of our birds today. An example here is the pigeon and the dinosaur. So this is an important slide for you to understand. You need to know what a transitional species is. Now, the important fossil sites in Africa, right? In Africa, we have discoveries in South Africa, Kenya, Zimbabwe that have been used to prove and validate that Africa was the home of early man. The Great Rift Valley here that you see is where lots of fossils were discovered. It is important to us because some of the oldest remains of ancestral humans have been found in the African segment of this Great Rift Valley, that is Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. Now, we're looking at those from those countries that I have mentioned, the Olduvai Gorge there, Latoli here, okay? And when we come down to South Africa, we are looking at Sterkfontein, Swartkrans, Kromdraai, and Taung in the Northwest Province. These we are lucky to boast here in Gauteng. So let's look at the fossil sites in South Africa. In South Africa, we have the cradle of humankind, and that is the Sterkfontein Caves in Gauteng. These are limestone caves in the cradle of humankind, in which more than 700 hominin fossils were discovered, right? And you need to know about the important ones that we are going to discuss. So we're looking at Sterkfontein, Swartkrans, Kromdraai, Plovers Lake, Gladysvale. These are all the important fossil sites here in South Africa in Gauteng, right? And as I said, Taung is in the Northwest Province. So the important fossils that were found here is the Australopithecus africanus, okay? Africanus for South Africa. And they are fossils of Homo habilis, Homo erectus, 3 and 2 million years ago, respectively. They have also found Paranthropus robustus fossils in this area. Right, now what does the fossil evidence tell us? The anatomical or structural features of organisms over ages changes gradually. 3 genera are sequenced from the oldest to the youngest. So let's look at Ardipithecus, living in trees, occasionally bipedal. So he walked on 4s, but he could walk on 2 legs sometimes, small brain. Australopithecus is small to bigger brain, more bipedal. And then the Homo species with a much bigger brain, bipedal all the time, and they used tools. And you can see the trend here from Ardipithecus through to Australopithecus and the Homo genus, which indicates larger brain size. Now, this is going to be significant, as you will see. Right, let's go and look at Ardipithecus. This is the first bipedal primate, but they also climbed trees and they could walk on, they were bipedal, but they walked on 4s as well, right? The next one, still staying with Ardipithecus. The name is Ardipithecus ramidus. Ardi for ground, Pithecus means ape, and ramid is root, probably what they ate. They lived about 4 to 5 million years ago in Eastern Africa, the Ethiopia region. These fossils were discovered by Tim White in 1994. A small brain size, 300 to 300 centimeters cubic. Now remember, we're looking at cubic centimeter, right? That's volume. So milliliter is the same as a cubic centimeter. These organisms were more prognathous. They had a pointed face, a poorly developed chin, not a defined chin, a poorly developed chin, a grasping big toe, which tells us they lived on trees because they could swing from branch to branch on trees, and their skeleton adapted for bipedalism as well. So the pelvis was shorter and broader than the apes. Now we look at Australopithecus. These were the first bipedal primates, right? Australo meaning southern, Pithecus meaning apes, right? And you can see here, right? They have smaller teeth, a sloping forehead, okay, a flatter nose. So let's look at Australopithecus afarensis in particular. Australopithecus afarensis, Afar, was from the Afar region. An example, a nickname is Lucy. Lucy was discovered 3.9 to 2.8 million years ago in the Afar region in Ethiopia. That is why we say Australopithecus Afar. So how are you going to remember about Lucy? Lucy was Australopithecus afarensis Afar. This fossil was discovered in Ethiopia, that's far away from South Africa, right? Therefore, the example is Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis, the Afar region, discovered by Donald Johnson and Louis Leakey, right? The brain size was about 430, a little bit bigger than Ardipithecus, a pronounced brow ridge, a sloping forehead. There's a pronounced brow ridge, you can see here, a sloping forehead, fully bipedal because the foramen magnum was in a forward position and the vertebral column was almost vertical. The canines are small, right? And they had long arms and curved fingers for climbing trees. Now, Lucy was a fossilized female skeleton discovered by Donald Johnson, and the shape of the pelvis indicated that this was probably a female. Okay, we're now going to look at the next one, which is Australopithecus africanus. Australopithecus africanus, guys, this one here is found in South Africa. That is why it has the name Africanus. This slide has a star here. Can you see the star? This means that you have to know this slide. You have to know the fossils that are found in South Africa. This is our heritage. They're found in our country. We need to make sure we know and learn about this, okay? And these could be coming out in the exam. Australopithecus africanus lived about 3.2 to 2.1 million years ago. They had a prognathous face, human-like teeth, but flatter, an average brain size of 480 cubic centimeters. Can you see? It's a little bit bigger. The foramen magnum is in a forward position, therefore they were bipedal. And examples of Australopithecus africanus which you have to learn is number one, the Taung child, found in Taung 2.3 million years ago, discovered by Raymond Dart in Taung. Right? So this is what you need to know. You need to know the name of the genus and the species, Australopithecus africanus. You need to know an example of it, the Taung child, who discovered it, Raymond Dart, and where was it discovered? In Taung in South Africa. So you need to learn these fossils in that manner, okay? Then we have Mrs. Pliss, which lived about 2.5 million years ago, discovered by Robert Broom in the Sterkfontein caves in 1947, right? And then we have Littlefoot, which lived about 3.9 to 4.2 million years ago, discovered by Ron Clark in the Sterkfontein caves. So Littlefoot is considered the most complete and oldest fossil hominin that was ever discovered, right? The fossil is about 90% complete. So it's amazing to see these at the Sterkfontein cave area and or the Maropeng site where you can view this. But this is what you have to know and understand for the exams. Right, there's your star there, again flicking at you to say that you have to learn this. Okay, now we come to Australopithecus sediba. And this fossil is nicknamed Karabo. Karabo means the answer. Now, why do you think the name Karabo is given to Australopithecus sediba, right? Why do you think the answer? Why do you think it has the name as the answer? So let's see. These people lived about 1.95 million years ago. The characteristics of both apes and humans. Okay, so in other words, this was a transitional fossil. I hope you said that. And that means Australopithecus sediba had characteristics of apes, right? And humans. And that is why it's called the answer, because it is a transitional fossil showing us the characteristics of the ancestors and the descendant. They were found in the Malapa caves in South Africa, discovered by Lee Berger and Brett Iloff in 2008. The brain size here was 420 to 450 milliliters. They were bipedal organisms. They had small molars, you can see here, and they had long arms. So there's a star that comes up to remind you that this is a slide you have to know, because Australopithecus sediba is one of our fossils found in South Africa at the Malapa Caves by Professor Lee Berger from Wits. Right. Okay, we seem to have a small problem. We'll get back to you in a few moments.
Believe in yourself. Believe a little more in yourself. Because to those that believe, nothing is impossible. You have done this before. You have passed your tests before. You have went into a higher grade before. It is possible because you have done it before. Do not doubt yourself. Keep believing in yourself. Keep pushing because this can be done and you can be great. The road to success is to commit to yourself. In order for you to become who you want to become as a student, you need to commit to reading your books, to studying, to bettering yourself. I know it's not going to be easy. Actually, no one said it's going to be easy. But if you put in the work, the results will show in your life. Tap into your power. Sometimes you will feel like putting away your books, and not reading as much as you're supposed to be. But I want you to commit, because through commitment, there is infinite power.
Sorry about that. I was telling you about Australopithecus sediba, and I said that the nickname is Karabo, which means the answer, because it's a transitional fossil that has characteristics of both the apes and the humans. And I remember it has the star here. Therefore, this is a fossil you must know about, right? Now we look at the genus Homo. So we're moving on now and we're progressing to the genus Homo that appeared in Africa approximately 2.2 million years ago. These were bipedal and they had a much larger brain size than the Australopithecines. So we're going to look at Homo habilis. Homo habilis had the nickname of the handyman, right? And they lived from 2.4 to 1.4 million years ago in the Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. Discovered by Mary and Louis Leakey, they had less pronounced brow ridges, not so pronounced as the previous organisms, less pronounced brow ridges, more human-like teeth, although they're still quite big, but more human-like teeth. Average brain size 650 cubic centimeters or milliliters. This is a big difference in brain size. They were less prognathous, they had long arms, and they made stone tools. So can you see the larger brain size? They had the ability then to make stone tools, which Sina will tell you more about. Then we look at Homo erectus. Homo erectus is the upright man, erect, stand up straight, right? The upright man that lived 1.89 to approximately 0.11 million years ago. They were found in Indonesia by Du Bois in 1891. Average brain size 900 centimeters cubic. So can you see what a significant change or difference in brain size? They had a sloping forehead, nose and jaws that were wide. So there's still no distinct chin, right? It's still a wide jaw, a large face, no chin, thick brow ridges, no cranial ridge. There's no cranial ridge, human-like body proportions. They developed tools, weapons, and fire, right? Because they developed fire, they were the first to use fire. Because they used fire, they were able to cook their food. They cooked their food and the food was tender. It was less tough. So they did not have huge canines. Can you see here? They didn't have huge canines to pull and rip meat apart because the meat was tender. Because they could use fire, they cooked their food. And therefore, the dentition will show you that it has changed from the previous organisms to this one here, right? And you need to know about Homo erectus because the fact that they could use fire means that they could wander off into the northern parts of the world where there's snow, where it's cold, because they could use fire and keep warm. And Sina will tell you more about them and moving up into the north. Now we come to our rock star. Guys, we have a rock star in South Africa, and our rock star is Homo naledi, right? Naledi means star, and it was found in the Rising Star Cave in the cradle of humankind. So this slide, this is what a Homo naledi probably looked like. And this slide has a star, which is our South African heritage, which you must know about, right? Homo naledi is nicknamed Neo, and Neo means gift. So this was a gift to us, right? After many years, we have found a fossil, and they lived approximately 335 to 236,000 years ago, found at the cradle of humankind in the Rising Star Cave by Professor Lee Berger. About 1,500 fossils were found in the site, right? The brain size was 460 to 610 centimeters cubed. They were prognathous, slender body, wide hips, human-like feet and hands, and long curved fingers, right? So what's interesting about this species is that they were social organisms, because many fossils were found in the same site. So there was a site, maybe a burial site, we're not sure, and there were about 1,500 fossils found in this area together. So that is why we say they were social animals and they lived together in one place. So please note that this has stars. This is a slide that you must know, and these are fossils that you have to know about: who discovered them, where were they discovered, and the name of the fossils, and you must be able to identify it, okay? Right, we now come to Homo heidelbergensis, that lived 300 to 600,000 years ago, discovered in 1907 in Heidelberg in Germany. Fossils also found in Africa, China, and India. So they ventured into those areas. They lived in groups. They hunted large animals. They used tools. They had big eyebrow ridges. They had a sloping forehead here, large jaw. Okay, small human-like teeth though, and a large brain size of 1280 centimeters cubic. So can you see, as you move to the higher brain sizes, you find that these organisms do more, use tools more, and evolve more with technology, right? They were tall and strong. Many researchers state that this is potentially the common ancestor of Homo neanderthalensis and the Homo sapiens. Now, the Homo neanderthalensis was discovered in the Neander Valley. Thal means valley. That's why the name Homo neanderthalensis. 200,000 years to 30,000 years ago in Europe. The brain size was 1,500 centimeters cubic. Thick brow ridges here, right? A broad nose, short and muscular. They buried their dead and they controlled fire. That's why they could venture out into the north. And now we look at Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens are the direct ancestors of modern humans. They appeared about 300,000 years ago, and Florisbad man was found by Dreyer in 1932 in the Free State, right? The brain size was 1,200 to 1,800 milliliters or centimeters cubic. Flat face, you can see here, it's a flat face. There is a distinct chin, small teeth, a gently curved palate, a round cranium, right? And a more rounded skull here, bipedal and short arms, right? So what you need to understand is this entire structure here is the skull, and just this top part here is the cranium. Right, so now we're going to look at some activities to see if you understood what I have explained to you, and to see if you can answer questions and probably understand what will probably come out in the exam. Right, so this is activity 1. Study the following graph and answer the questions that follow. So you know now, from all the sessions you've been listening about to the broadcasting, we've all reiterated that you need to unpack the diagram that is given to you even before you start looking at the questions. So this is a graph. Here we have cranial capacity, and on this side we have time with millions of years ago, and there's my 0. So I'm going to start counting 0 and move this way, right, towards that way. Let me show you with an arrow. Right. Name the family to which all these species belong to. Guys, this is a question that comes out in every past paper that you look, you will find this question. So this is one that you must learn to answer, learn to spell the word hominidae. Hominidae is what you must learn how to spell, and know this one here for 1 mark for free for you, right? Okay. What is the largest cranial capacity in centimeters cubed of Australopithecus africanus? So let's look here. We have Australopithecus africanus here. There we have Homo habilis. Here we have Homo erectus. And here we have the Homo sapiens. So let's look at Australopithecus africanus. And we're looking here along this axis here because we're looking at cranial capacity, right? And the largest then will be the line drawn there, and that is 600 centimeters cubed. When did Homo habilis become extinct? So let's look. There's Homo habilis here in this square here. Homo habilis started around that time and became extinct around this time here. So that's 1.246 million years ago. That's when they became extinct. Okay, let's move on. This activity 1 is continued. Name 2, right, in bold, Australopithecus fossils found in South Africa. Okay, so you know those by now because we have been through that already. Australopithecus fossils, you could say any one of these for 2 marks. Daung Child, Mrs. Ples, Karabo, or Littlefoot. Which of the organisms represented above has the greatest range in cranial capacity? So we're going to look, obviously, if you look at the cranial capacity, 1,200 starting, ending with 1,800. So it is the Homo sapiens. Right. Activity 2. Based on the differences in dentition, what conclusion can be made about the change in diet from Australopithecus afarensis, this one here, to Homo sapiens here? So look at the dentition. That is what the question is saying. The question is asking you to look at the dentition and come up with a conclusion. So let's look at the dentition. Here we've got a diastema. There we don't have one. Here the canines are slightly bigger. Here we have smaller teeth. So what conclusion can you come up looking at the dentition? That is the diet. The diet changed from eating raw food to cooked food, right? So raw food was the Australopithecines, and then cooked food was the genus Homo, right? The Homo sapiens ate cooked food, and that is why the dentition changed to much smaller teeth. Number 2, Australopithecus may be described as a transitional species. Remember, we spoke about that, between chimpanzee and the Homo sapiens. So we're saying that Australopithecus, this one here, may be a transitional fossil. Define a transitional fossil. A transitional fossil shows the intermediate characteristics, right, between 2 genera or 2 species, or it has characteristics common to both the ancestor species and the descendant species, meaning the species that follows. Right, activity 2 continued. Use one visible feature. When we say visible, means you can see from the diagram of the jaw, right, to explain why Australopithecus afarensis may be described as a transitional species. So we need to look from the diagram why we say that Australopithecus afarensis may be a transitional species. If you look at the canines, they are smaller than those of the chimpanzee. Look at the chimpanzee and look at the Australopithecus afarensis, right? Then, but these ones are bigger than these ones. Okay, they're bigger than those. So the canines or the teeth are smaller than those of the chimpanzee, but larger than those of the Homo sapiens. Or you could say the jaw or palate is more rounded than that of the chimpanzee and less rounded than the Homo sapiens See, this is a little bit more rounded, and this one is more rounded there. You could also say the jaw is smaller than that of the chimpanzee, but larger than the Homo sapiens. So it's just 2 marks, but we're giving you what you could possibly say in relation to the jaw. Right, activity 3, the diagram below shows 3 skulls. So we have A, B, and C, right? And they arrange, so we are asking you to arrange the skulls A, B, and C from oldest to youngest, right? So what clue? How are you going to arrange them? You're going to look at the cranium size. Now, this entire structure here is the skull. The jaw, dentition, nose, eye sockets, that's the entire skull. The cranium is the part that houses the brain. So just this top part here is the cranium. So if you look at that, that will give you a clue how to arrange them. So the smallest one, the smallest cranium there will be B, and then we look at C, and then we go to A. So there's 2 marks for that, B, C, A. So it's 2 marks or nothing. Describe the significance of the difference in cranium size between skulls A and skulls C. So we are looking at the entire skull, but we are saying now, describe the significance in the difference of the cranium size. So now we're only looking at the cranium size, right? What is the significance of this difference? The cranium of skull A is larger than the cranium of skull C, indicating an increase in brain capacity, brain size, therefore intelligence. Or you could say the cranium of skull C is smaller than that of skull A, indicating a reduced brain capacity or reduced intelligence. Number 3, describe 2 visible differences. Again, we are looking at 2 visible differences. Now, what I want to show you here is that 2 is in capital letters, and we only asking you for 2. Therefore, make sure, learners, you write down the 2 most important ones, because we mark the first 2. So if we ask you for 2, we mark the first 2 only. So make sure that when you see this, you put your most important facts at the beginning, because those are the 2 that we are going to mark. Right. So describe 2 visible differences in the structure of the jaw of skulls A and skulls B. So now we're looking at the jaw, right? So skull A has a less protruding jaw than skull B. Skull A has a well-defined chin compared to skull B, right? Skull B does not. And skull A has a smaller jaw, whereas skull B has a much larger jaw. So can you see the trend in the similar kind of questions that we are asking you? So if you go over these questions, you should be ready for the exam. Right, activity 4. Professor Lieberger and his colleagues studied the fossils they found in the cradle of humankind. The skeletons from the cave are ranked amongst the most complete finds to date. The adult female Australopithecus sediba was remarkably well preserved, and some of the following characteristics were observed. So the block in pink tells us the characteristics that Australopithecus sediba had, right, or what they observed from this fossil. A small brain size, smaller canines, a projecting nose, small body size, and bipedal. So now, if we look at this, remember we said that Australopithecus sediba is a transitional fossil having characteristics of the ancestor and the descendant, right? So let's see the characteristics that apply to Homo sapiens. So small brain, no, because Homo sapiens have larger brains. Smaller canines, yes, that could be one of them. A projecting nose, definitely, and bipedal. So let's look at that, right? Smaller canines, a projecting nose, and bipedal. So those are the characteristics that they share with Homo sapiens. Two advantages. So remember, we'll mark the first two of Australopithecus sediba being bipedal. But we're just giving you examples of what you can say. They had a wider view to spot danger. They could carry offspring. They could carry tools. They could carry weapons. They could hunt, okay, because they had two free arms. And they had a large surface area for thermoregulation. Activity 4 continued. Professor Berger called Australopithecus sediba a transitional fossil. Using the information in the list, explain why he called Australopithecus sediba a species in transition. Right? So as we said, that they have both characteristics of Australopithecus, the ancestor species, and the Homo species, which is the descendant species. Right, activity 5. Study the table which shows the evolutionary trends provided by the anatomical features of fossils. Again, we're looking at the word anatomical, which means structure, right? How many million years ago did Homo erectus first appear? So let's see. We are given a table. We are given different genera down here. There's the skull, brain volume here. And here is the period of existence in million years ago. So when we ask you how many million years ago did Homo erectus first appear, we're going to look here at this column and look at Homo erectus and see here, right? When did they first appear? That's the question, not when they became extinct. When did they first appear? So they appeared 2 million years ago. If I asked you when they became extinct, then you'll say 0.4 million years ago. Okay, so be careful what we are asking you in the exam. Calculate the difference in brain size between Australopithecus and the Homo species. So we're looking at Australopithecus, brain size here, 430 cubic centimeters, and the Homo sapien here is 1450. Difference means to subtract and show all the calculations. Therefore, 1450 subtract 430 gives us 102 centimeters cubed. Right, activity 5 continued. State 3 advantages. State 3, again we're asking you for 3. We're going to mark the first 3 advantages of a larger brain size. What could the advantage be? Have a better coordination of movement, process large amounts of information, process the information much faster, right? Development of written and spoken languages to communicate. So they were not making sounds. They were not making sounds. They were using language, actual language, to communicate. Tabulate. Guys, there we find the word tabulate. When you see the word tabulate, it must tell you draw a table. 1 mark for drawing a table. 3 visible differences. Again, we want to see those differences between skulls of Homo sapiens and the African ape. So we're looking at the skull of Homo sapien and the skull of the African ape there, right? And it says tabulate visible differences. So you could say Homo sapiens, large cranium, here smaller cranium. Smaller jaw, bigger jaw. Non-prognathous, straight, and here prognathous, okay? Smaller teeth or canines, and the ape had much larger teeth or canines. Eyebrow ridges are present there. Eyebrow ridges here are much smaller. Well-developed chin, and here there's no well-developed chin. And there's a diastema there, but there's nothing present in the Homo sapiens, okay? So make sure you understand that. Right, activity 6, this is our last activity. The table below shows evolution of cranial capacity, right? In some species, name 2 hominid genera in the table, right? So we're looking at hominids And two of them, you could actually say any one of these because they are all hominids. They all form in the evolutionary line of the development of the Homo sapiens. So we could say Sahelanthropus, Australopithecus, or the Homo. Two fossils of Australopithecus africanus that were found in South Africa. Again, we're getting this question, right? Two fossils of Australopithecus africanus that were found in South Africa. So here you should be saying, you should be knowing Taung Child, Mrs. Place, and Littlefoot. So any two of those would get you your marks. Right, and the genus that appeared first on Earth in the table, which genus appeared first? So we're going to look now at the period of existence. And when we look at this, we see here the oldest one is Sahelanthropus, which is 7 to 6 million years ago. And then we have the Australopithecus africanus, 3 to 2. So we are going down. It must be Sahelanthropus. That's the one which is 7 to 6 million years ago. That is the oldest, or appeared first on the table. Which hominid had a cranial capacity closest to that of the Homo sapiens? Now we're looking at cranial capacity. Right, 480, 650, 900, 1500, and Homo sapiens is 1450. Therefore, this one, Homo neanderthalensis, is the one that has the closest cranial capacity to the Homo sapiens. Give the smallest cranial capacity in cubic centimeters of a Homo species. So now we're looking at all these Homo species and we're looking at the cranial capacity in cubic centimeters, right? And we are looking at the smallest cranial capacity, and that will be this one, Homo habilis, which is 650 centimeters cubed. And the last one, when did Australopithecus africanus become extinct? So let's look at Australopithecus africanus. Existed 3 to 2 million years ago. So the answer there would be 2 million years ago. Right, guys, this brings us to the end of the first part. Stay right where you are. My colleague Sina will take you through the rest of the presentation in a few moments.
afternoon, grade 12s. Welcome back to the second session of today's presentation. My name is Sina Sekhere, and please remember, we do have our WhatsApp line where you can post your questions. The number is 079 454 9535. So to continue with our lesson, remember we are still tracing the lines of evidence that were used to support the evidence of evolution. So Fozi has taken you through fossil evidence. So it was quite a lovely session where we learned all about the fossils and the evidence that was found in South Africa that we need to be proud of as South Africans, as it is part of our heritage. But we are now going to look at another part of evidence that was used to support the theory of evolution, which is genetic evidence or the mitochondrial DNA. So what did the scientists use to support the theory of evolution in terms of genetic evidence? So we're going to look at that. So what does genetic evidence mean? What do we look at when we look at genetic evidence? So we're going to look at the similarities and the differences between the genetic composition or the DNA nitrogenous basis of the species. Now, what does that mean? If you take the DNA strand of one organism and you put a DNA strand of another organism and you check the sequencing of the nitrogenous basis of both, the more similarities that you find or the more differences that you find will tell you how closely or far related the organisms are. So it will tell you about the relatedness of those two organisms. So if the DNA matches more closely, then we can say these organisms or the two organisms are closely related. But if the DNA strands are further apart or there's a huge gap or there's a huge difference in the sequencing, then we can say those two organisms are not closely related, but they may have a common ancestor. So we are able to trace also the common ancestry using DNA. So this is the form of genetic evidence that we use when we want to trace organisms, their relatedness, using the DNA of these organisms. Right. Another form of evidence that is used is mitochondrial DNA. Remember when you go back to the first session of your exam part, of your DNA, when you do your exam guideline, you talk about how you write your DNA names. So your mitochondrial DNA, how you write it, is you write with your small mt and your capital letter DNA. So mitochondrial DNA, this is a type of DNA that is very, very simple. You find it on the mitochondrion. You remember the cell from grade 10 with all its organelles, and you remember the organelle there, the mitochondrion. That mitochondrion has a type of DNA which we call mitochondrial DNA. So if you look at the three types of DNAs that you have your ribosomal DNA, you have your mitochondrial DNA, and your nuclear DNA. The mostly widely used type of DNA is your nuclear DNA. However, the mitochondrion also has a part of DNA that we can use to trace the lineage or the ancestry of organisms or of the hominin species to support our theory of evolution. So when we talk about mitochondrial DNA, what do we mean by that? If you remember your fertilization, when you were doing your topic, human reproduction, you did fertilization. What happens during fertilization? Your female and your male gametes are going to fuse. So let us look at the ovum here. So this part here is your ovum. So your ovum comes with the rest of its part. Remember, the ovum comes with all its organelles. However, the sperm cell does not come with all its organelles. You remember the sperm cells, you have your acrosome and your head with the nucleus inside that. And then this part over here, your middle piece here, is where you find your mitochondrion on the sperm cell. However, during fertilization, we know that only the head of the sperm cell is going to fuse with the ovum. So that fusion is taking place here. So when the sperm cell or when the head of the sperm cell fuses with the ovum, the tail, if you can take a look at this part, the tail from the mitochondrion, from the middle piece to the tail, those parts are discarded. They do not form part of our new zygote. So meaning our zygote is going to have what? The DNA of the mitochondrion of the female, of the mother, because that one of the father was discarded with the rest of the sperm cell. Right. So the offspring will therefore carry the genetic mitochondrial DNA of the females. Now, this information is very crucial for the scientists as they use it now to support the out of Africa hypothesis, which we're going to talk about later, where you're going to learn how we use this mitochondrial DNA to support the out of Africa hypothesis. But just take note of that. This is just a simpler type of DNA, which we find it is a simpler as compared to the nuclear DNA. So if you take a look at this diagram over here on the right, it just shows you your cell here. This is the cell that we're talking about that you learned about in grade 10. So this will be your animal cell. You see all your organelles there in the cell, but the one that you want to focus on is this one that we zoomed out on, which is your mitochondrion. Then this mitochondrion, this is where they found your mitochondrial DNA. And now we use this as a line of evidence only with the females. Only the females' mitochondrial DNA can be used as an evidence to support ancestry or relatedness, because the males do not have, the zygote do not have the mitochondrial DNA of the males. I hope that story is clear. Right, moving on to the first activity. Right, with genetic evidence, there's not really much, but you just need to know that we use that to support. It is a line of support for our theory of evolution. Right, so for this activity, we're going to look at this diagram. It says the diagram below shows a phylogenetic tree based on DNA similarities. Every time when you get a question, please take note of what they are giving you. Sometimes it may say DNA differences, and if you miss that, you will not be able to give the correct answers. So in this case, we have DNA similarities between the organisms that will be shown in our phylogenetic trees, and I hope by now everyone is able to read a phylogenetic tree from the left, from the right, top, bottom, however way it is presented to you. You are able to interpret the information on a phylogenetic tree because it shows you the relatedness of the species that are found here. So just studying this one that we have in front of us here, we see that we have a phylogenetic tree based on DNA similarities. So that is our caption for this diagram over here. Then you see the years in millions of years ago. You know that we start from the recent, which is here, going backwards. When we read our phylogenetic tree, we start from the recent. Now, this will be our recent time. Then we're going backwards. So it shows you that which organisms are living in present times and which ones lived in the past. So we go back in time. So when you interpret here, you're going to see that the humans and the chimpanzees and the common chimpanzees, the similarities is 1.4%, the humans and the gorillas 1.6. So you read, that's how you read your phylogenetic tree. Now let's go to the question. It says that the percentage next to each branch shows the amount of difference in the genome, DNA nucleotide sequence of the two relevant groups. Now, from the diagram, determine how long ago the chimpanzees split from the line of humans. Now you're going to go straight to what they are asking you in essence here is that what is the common ancestor of the chimpanzees and the humans? When did the chimpanzees split from the humans? So you're going to go to your phylogenetic tree and trace where they are joined together. So when you see here, this is where they start branching. So from this now, how long ago? So how long ago? It wants you to give time. So when you see here, this is where your common ancestor for the chimpanzees and for your humans would have been, and the split took place here in that direction for the humans, in this direction for the chimpanzees. Please take note that these two are the groups of chimpanzees, or the two species of chimpanzees. Right. So because you are looking at the time where they split, you're going to go there. So when did that happen? It happened 5 million years ago. Please make sure that you collect a lot of marks here, because these are just easy marks if you are able to interpret your phylogenetic tree. Now, question number 2 says, which organism is most closely related to the humans? So now you're going to come back to your phylogenetic tree and check which one is closely related to the humans, meaning the one which has less differences. So here is your chimpanzees. So your chimpanzees are closer to the humans. Even if you didn't have the values, you would still be able to answer this question, as you are able to interpret the phylogenetic tree in terms of the lines. What do they mean, where they split, where it shows a common ancestor that is being shared. You will still be able to answer this question. However, you use the information that is given to you. Right. Oh, and now I've given you the answer for the previous one. Now we're going to go back. Excuse me. Right. Calculate the similarity between the genome of chimpanzee and the human. So the genome of the human and that of the chimpanzee. Now we know we need to have 100%. Now, if in 100% is the human, so how much are we going to minus? We're going to minus 1.4%, meaning this is the difference from the humans and the chimpanzee. So what is now the similarity? If this is the difference, what is the similarity? So the similarity would be the difference there from 100 minus 1.4, which is your 98.6%. So that is how closely related they are. And please take note, when you are asked such a question, you are able to write the unit. The mark also here is given for percentage. If your answer is just 98.6, without the percentage, you are going to lose this 1 mark. So please make sure that you write your answer in full. And sometimes the examiners put the marks, the 2 marks at the end of the question itself. So if you do not have the percentage, you may find yourself losing the entire 2 marks. Please note that please take note that you write your full units if they are given. Right. For the second question, also on DNA, the graph below shows the percentage similarities between humans, which is written as HU, humans' DNA, and the DNA of some species of the African apes. So the some species, will see them as we go. So we're going to read the table, the graph, and see what is happening there. Before you even attempt to go to the questions, you must understand what is happening on the graph or on the questions. Be able to study. Even if the question does not say study the diagram, you study the diagram. And how do you do that? You try to interpret before you even go to the questions. Now, what do you have here? You have a bar graph showing the type of African apes. So we have these types. We have the chimpanzees, we have the gibbon, we have the rhesus monkey, we have the galago. Then we have the percentage similarity to human DNA. So the human DNA is not shown here, but we know that all of this is compared to the human DNA. So the chimpanzees would have 98% similarities. The gibbons will have 96% similarities to the humans. Remember, we are comparing this to the humans. Then the rhesus monkey will have 94% similarities to the humans, and the galago will have 72% similarities to the humans. Now you have interpreted your table here. Now, what does it say on the right? This is now our question based on this information. It says now, which one of the following phylogenetic trees best represent the information in the graph? Now, you're going to check now the differences or how further is everyone from the human. Remember, the main one that we are comparing to is the human. Now, if you see that it is further away from it, it means it is further and further not related. Now, how do you represent this in a phylogenetic tree? First, you must check which one, for A, which one did they say is a common ancestor? We have just a common ancestor for all of them, but when you go up, it says that the rhesus monkey here is the common ancestor of the gibbon and the galago. That is not true, because all of these are independent. They all have a common ancestor, and this information here, the gibbon does not give proof that it is there. I mean, the rhesus monkey does not give proof that it is the common ancestor for these two. Right, so we already scrape A. Then we come to B. With B, we check the common ancestor for all, but now you check all of these. The humans are closely related to the galago. When you go back to your graph, is that true? Look at the differences between the similarities between the humans and the Galago. It's 72%. Now, 72%, when you represent that phylogenetically, will it be next to the humans? No. So you look for one thing that is going to discredit your answer for multiple choice, and you must be left with one that best suits your situation. Now let's look at C. C says the common ancestor, there is the common ancestor for all. And then you see the Galago. Galago, remember, is GA. The Galago is the one that is on its own. It is the one that is further apart from all these organisms. So we can agree that this is represented correctly. Then when you go up, you see the rhesus monkey and also the gibbon. So the rhesus monkey and the gibbon, you see this one and this one. They come and share common ancestor here. So we can also agree to that situation to say it is possible that these two, 96 plus 94, may share a common ancestor. And then going up, you see now the chimpanzees being closer, the closest that is related to the humans. You come to your graph. This one is the one that shows you that this one and this one are closely related. So this information here is what brings you closer to your answer. Then we see that our answer is C. We don't just choose. However, when you are left with no choice, just pick and choose. Right. Activity 2. This has a lot of reading that you need to listen to. Right. Scientists compare the number of differences in the amino acids to see how closely related species are. This is what we've spoken about to say this is how they use the genetic evidence. Now, fewer differences in the amino acid sequence mean the species are more closely related. If there are few differences, then it means you are more closely related. But if there are larger differences, it means you are further related. Now, cytochrome C is a protein that occurs in many species. The amino acid sequence of this protein differs between species. The table below shows the number of differences in the amino acid sequence of 3 species, which is A, B, and C. Now let us look at the table. So this table shows now the comparison between the amino acid of the species A, B, and C. Remember, the amino acids are the building blocks for your protein. So this protein that we are tracing is cytochrome C. Now we want to see how the amino acid, what were the differences or the similarities that were found. So these are the differences in this table. So for species A, as compared to species B, there were 11 differences. Species A compared to species C, there were 3 differences. Then this is just species B. Species B compared to species C, there were 10 differences. Right. What type of genetic evolution is being used in this table? This is a given mark. As soon as they are talking about the amino acids, remember DNA forms amino acid protein synthesis, you know that. So this is genetic evidence. The only way they could get this information was through genetics. So this is genetic evidence that is used. Right. Bearing that information in mind, give the letter of the species A, B, and C that should appear at position 1, 2, and 3 in the diagram below. So we're going to go back. Look, which species have the least amount of differences? So you have your species A as compared to species C. The number of differences there was 3. That gives us what information? That species A and species C are closely related than species A to B or species B to C. So let us now try to represent that in a phylogenetic tree below. So you have 1, 2, and 3. So where would you put your A and B? Bearing in mind that your species A is closely related to species C. So you check your common ancestry. So if this one is branching over here, it shows the close relatedness. So this is where you put your species A and your species C. Or you can put C and A. Either way round will still be correct. And then here you will have your species B, which was a little bit further apart from these 2 species. However, they still share a common ancestor. Let's look at the answer. There we go. So for 1, you can put A or you can put C. Either one will still be correct. Then for 2, vice versa. Then for 3, it's B. This information, you got it from the table from the previous. So you must be able to interpret the table. So that is genetic evidence. So what other line of evidence was used to support the theory of evolution? It is the cultural evidence of tool making. So what do we mean by that? The increasing complexity of items such as artifacts and tools. Artifacts are the things that you use, that you see, and then the tools are an indication of the advances or the evolution of the human intellect. As the species were evolving, you could see the development or the improvement in their intellect with the evidence that was collected from the artifact, from the things that they were doing, from the walls, the arts on the walls, from the tools that were found. It shows that thought process has been applied in them making those tools. That shows us, or that gives us, that these organisms are now building intelligence. So tool making was, cultural evidence was collected to show that this is how now these species have developed or have evolved intellectually, because they have now used their thought process to think about making this particular tool or to think about making this particular artifact. Right. So the first one was tool making. Tool making, if you can take a look at these stones here, they have different shapes. So they were using stones with cutting and sewing, right, which improved human nutrition. The first ones to use stones, Fawzi has told you, are the Homo habilis, which are also known as the handymen. So the handymen were the first hominin species that that had evidence of using the stone tools. Now, these stone tools, all of them had a different purpose. So if you take a look at the shapes, the development of stone became more sophisticated as the humans evolved. Now, before we go to that, let us take a look at this, the shapes of the stones. If you take a look at this one, it is more flat and rounded. So you would say that maybe they were using it for grinding food. And then this one is a bit sharp and pointy. You would say they were using it maybe for stabbing the animal and then cutting. You see this other one is very sharp and very thin. So you would say they were using it for cutting or chopping organisms or meat that they were eating to finer, smaller cubes. And this now improved what? It improved their nutrition, as they were now able to get the food at their most smallest complex. Now, the development of stone got more and more sophisticated. It did not stay with the Homo habilis. Yes, they were the first handymans, but the species that came after that, the Homo erectus, they found that, okay, tools are here, they are used. They still developed more. They still found more purposes. They still found more ways of using these different tools, which led to the new now ways of eating, diet. And then the erectors were the ones to make fire, were the first ones to start making fire. So when they are cutting their meat, they're using their tools. Now this is when they are starting to do what? To cook their meat. When they cook the meat, they're getting now more nutrition. Now the dentition, that Fawzi spoke about, changes because it evolves with the organisms. Now the organisms don't have to tear raw meat. They don't have to tear the animals. They have now cut them into smaller pieces. They no longer need very sharp canines. They no longer need all those types of dentition. So now that's how the more rounded dentition developed from the erectors going forward. Now, this is proof. As the scientists collected the tools, this was proof to them that these organisms are building intelligence from one group to the other. Right. So when we take a look at this diagram here, it shows you from here the increasing brain size. So this supports their theory that they are building intelligence as well. So the Homo habilis were the first one to use the tools. And if you take a look at the shapes of the tools here, they have now become more sophisticated with the next group, which is the Homo erectus. The next group made their tools even more sharper, more stronger, more. They were now using it, having applied their brain. As their brain size increased, it shows intelligence. They had more thought process than the previous species. Now they are able to use their tools more. Sophistication did not end there. We came, the Homo sapiens. If you can ask the Homo sapiens about the tools that they have today, the list will be endless. We have a tool for almost everything. So we have built on from what our ancestors or what our relatives, our related hominid species have started already. So our complexity brought us to use even more advanced and more sophisticated tools. So as the brain was increasing. So this is to corroborate the story of the tools being sophisticated, also meaning that the brain was also becoming more sophisticated. Right. This is just another diagram that shows you where the tools started. And then language also was also a part that shows development of the brain, shows the sophistication of the brain. So as the years we're going now to the present. So if you see, remember the present is always on your right. Right. When you go to your present, you see that speech and language developed here. Right. Remember the language, the first language will not be language that we are using now to socialize and to have some social interactions. It was language for them to communicate and be able to hear one another when there's danger or what, like warning signs. Like it was not a sophisticated language that we have now with the Homo sapien species, right? So we're going to look at an activity again that traces the evolution of cultural evidence and tool making, right? Study the phylogenetic tree below, which shows a possible representation of human evolution. The solid lines represent the origin and the extinction of the species. The skulls are not representative of the species and are not drawn to scale. So take a look at those skulls. These skulls are all the same. This was just to show you the position of the species. Now, when you take a look at your graph, this information here, they did not include this information for free. You must utilize every information that you find in your diagram. So we have here use of stone tools. Excuse me there. So here will be your beginning of the use of stone tools. Here would be continuing or the end. Then here would also be the the beginning where fire was used. This will be where it ends or going forward. But with our diagram, this will be where it ends here. So we take a look at million years ago. So we have our species. This is still a phylogenetic tree. You can still read which organism is the common ancestor of which species is the common ancestor of which species. You can still follow that through on this diagram, but I don't want to write on the diagram to make it a mess because I want you to be able to see when we do the questions. Right, so we have that information, and then we have our common ancestor here, which is our Australopithecus afarensis. Then we have it branching to our Homo habilis and our Australopithecus africanus, and then Africanus to Paranthropus bossei, Paranthropus robustus. Then you have your Homo rudolfensis, and then you have your Homo heidelbergensis, then you have your Homo sapiens and Homo erectus. So those are the species that you find there now. According to the phylogenetic tree, very, very important. You don't just answer based on what you know. You answer based on the question that is given or in the information that you have in front of you. But here, they want us to give an answer according to the phylogenetic tree that we have. Now, which species was the first to use simple stone tools? Now, the use of stone tools, remember I said this is the beginning. So what are you going to do? My hand is a bit squeaky. You're going to draw a line there at the beginning and see which ones were the first ones to start using the stone tools. So according to our line there, what do we have? The first one that touches there is this one, Homo rudolfensis. So let's check if we are correct. That is correct. And please remember, you must make sure that you are able to write your scientific name. How do you write your scientific name? This is your genus name. Your genus name will have a capital letter, and then your species name will have a small letter, and all of this should be underlined if you are using your own handwriting, because when you are using a computer, this will be italic. You see, it is written it is squeaked to the right or something there. So you are not going, some of you, your handwritings are already facing to the right or to the left. So we won't be able to see whether you italic or that is your handwriting. So how do we know that? If you underline a scientific word, a scientific name. Now, number 2 says, name 3 species represented that used simple stone tools and fire. Now, you are not only going to look at the organisms that use stone tools, you're going to look at those that use stone tool together with fire. So, you're going to look at the block that says fire. So, here is fire. We go down. So, you're going to look at everything that comes from the right here. So, you have your Homo heidelbergensis, you have your Homo sapiens, your Homo erectus, and your Paranthropus boisei. So all of these we're using, remember, they are using now the stone tools, because the bar for the stone tool still continues. They are using the stone tools together with fire. Let's check if we are correct. So any 3 of those. Right. Homo heidelbergensis, Homo erectus, and Homo sapiens. We are correct. Right. Now we move into the very interesting and a very important part of our presentation, out of Africa hypothesis. I know learners, when they hear this, they think it's just 2 marks. There's a lot of marks that you can collect here, and the examiners always put out of Africa in the exam, so you must be able to know. So your exam guideline on page 15 tells you exactly what you need to study when it comes to the out of Africa hypothesis. So what does it say? What is the out of Africa hypothesis? The way in which you say it is very important. The out of Africa says modern humans originated in Africa, and then they migrated to other continents. Very important. Please make sure that you specify these words. The modern humans. This is very important also. Modern humans. So the modern humans originated in Africa and then migrated to other continents. Please don't say other parts of the world. Don't say to other parts, or just don't be vague about it. Make sure that you specify that it is continents that they are moving to. You will see the map that I'm going to show you just now. It shows the different continents. So the out of Africa hypothesis is specific and mainly talking about how the modern humans have migrated. So you cannot just say they have migrated to the next part of the world. Which one? You need to specify that the out of Africa hypothesis says that the modern humans originated in Africa, but then migrated to different continents. That's how you say it. That's what it says. So they have some form of evidence they use to support this theory. Remember, a theory follows a scientific process. So because you have to support your theory, you must give us some form of evidence which you use to support your theory. Now, this theory, what is it that the scientists use to support the fact that they say that modern humans originated in Africa, but then migrated to other continents? What gives them that? They support their information with evidence. The first evidence that they use is fossil evidence. They use fossil evidence. Now, this is the information of each of the following fossils. Now, this is what your exam guideline is telling you. Your exam guideline says you must know which fossils were used as evidence to support the out of Africa hypothesis. Then they also used genetic evidence. We're going to look into all of this now. Remember, this is only just a part of the exam guideline. On page 15, your exam guideline tells you that you need to know what is out of Africa hypothesis, what lines of evidence was used to support the out of Africa hypothesis. So there were fossils that were used to support that theory, and also genetic evidence was used to support that theory. Right. So now we're going to go into it. When you take a look at this, this is now us trying to use the information to support the out of Africa hypothesis. When you take a look at this diagram here, I'm writing on red with red, you can't see, but here, this is the continent, Africa. They say that these organisms first, or the modern humans, were found here. Then they migrated. If you follow the arrows are now going into different continents. They are going into different continents. So this is just a statement of the out of Africa hypothesis. This is what it means on this map. What you are looking at is the out of Africa hypothesis, saying that the modern humans originated in Africa and then they migrated to different continents. That's what we have. Now let's support our hypothesis. How do we support this hypothesis? You have studied these fossils with Fawzi just now. Now, they are also being used to support the out of Africa hypothesis. What do we say? What did they find that supports that with these fossils? They found that Ardipithecus fossils were found in Africa only. Very, very important. How you write this in the exam is going to determine whether you get the mark or not. If you say Ardipithecus fossils were found in Africa, still it leaves room for another continent. So if you say only, then you're proving that these ones will support our theory of evolution. Right, so you must say nowhere else in the world. They lived for about 4 to 5 million years ago. Now this will give you a support. Remember, Ardipithecus species are the ones that will give rise to the Homo species, the Homo. Remember, this is our ancestor now. This is where we start. So if they were found here only and nowhere else in the world, that supports the out of Africa hypothesis, because this is what gave rise to the modern human. Right. The Australopithecus fossils were found in no, this was Ardipithecus. Sorry. Ardipithecus is our common ancestor. Then it gave rise to the Australopithecus fossils. Now, the species also that came from Ardipithecus were found in Africa only. These two sentences gets you 2 marks. We support our out of Africa hypothesis by saying what? The Ardipithecus fossils were found in Africa only. Number 2, your Australopithecus fossils were found in Africa only. So for saying those 2 things, you get yourself 2 marks. So the examples are the ones that Fawzi told you to take pride in, are the Karabo, Littlefoot, Daun Child, and Mrs. Place. Another one. Remember, we want to collect 4 marks actually for this question. Right. We're still wanting to support our out of Africa hypothesis. What did they use? They found that the oldest fossil of Homo erectus, remember Homo erectus is the species that came after Homo habilis, were found in Africa. Which one first? Africa. It's still supporting what? The out of Africa hypothesis. So the Homo erectus were found in Africa, then followed by Asia, and the youngest fossils of Homo erectus were found in Europe. So the oldest, so if it says the oldest, it means it was found the first. The oldest was found in Africa of the Homo erectus, and then followed by the ones that were found in Asia, and the youngest was found in Europe, meaning it later went to the continent of Europe at a later stage. But initially, where was it? The Homo erectus. Initially, the Homo erectus was found in Africa, because the oldest fossil shows that it is found here in Africa. You get another mark for saying that. The 4th mark that we are chasing, you say that the oldest fossils of Homo, which is Homo habilis, and other bipedal organisms were found in Africa. So the oldest fossil of Homo, You prove it by saying what? The oldest were found in Africa. So if the oldest is found in Africa, it means it originated in Africa first before it could go to other continents. The other ones that are found in other continents will be younger than the one that we found in Africa. So if Africa has the oldest, then it means Africa is where they originated before they migrated to other parts of the world. I hope that gives you marks to prove the out of Africa hypothesis. Right, so when we take a look at this now, we're looking at genetic evidence. Remember, we said they use two things to support the out of Africa hypothesis. The first thing that they use is fossil evidence. What fossil evidence did they use? Remember, is that one of Ardipithecus is found only in Africa and nowhere else in the world. Then you have Australopithecus found in Africa. Then you have your Homo erectus, your oldest found in Africa, then followed by others, Asia and what. Then you have your Homo habilis, your oldest fossil of your Homo habilis found in Africa. So those are the four fossil evidence that we use to support the out of Africa hypothesis. Now, another thing that they use to support the out of Africa hypothesis is genetic evidence. So what genetic evidence did they use? Already you know how we use genetic evidence to support relatedness. Now, here, they took the analysis of the mutations in the mitochondrial DNA. Remember, we said mitochondrial DNA, you can only get it from the females. So they trace the oldest female ancestor to East Africa. So here will be our East, remember, North, East, West, South. So this is our Eastern Africa. So on the East here, they find that the oldest female ancestor was found in Africa. Through what? Tracing mitochondrial DNA. So meaning the oldest mitochondrial DNA of our hominid or modern humans were found in the East Africa or in the east of Africa. So we were able to prove that using that genetic evidence. When they compared all the mitochondrial DNA, the oldest one was the one of that hominid fossil that was found in the east of Africa. So in that way, it supports that modern humans have originated in Africa and later migrated to other parts or other continents. Remember, continents. Right, then we can take a look at an activity that will deal with this later. Right, activity 5. This is our last activity. Right, fossil evidence for humans may be interpreted in different ways. One possible model of human evolution is shown below. This is a phylogenetic tree. Deal with phylogenetic trees to trace that relatedness and all that. Now, for A, name the family to which all the represented organisms belong. Free mark. You need to know this off by heart. Just know it at the back of your mind. You can use it whenever they want. This is just an easy mark for you. Which family? Hominidae. Remember the spelling. Yes, we know there may be many hominid species, hominids, worldwide. You may confuse the words, but this one, make sure that you remember. Hominidae is the family. Family meaning a big family in which all of these hominid species fall under. So the name of the family, when you say it's family Hominidae. Right. Describe how cultural evidence is used to support the theory of evolution. Now, cultural evidence, we're bringing it into now, how do they use it to support the theory of evolution? Remember, not out of Africa, but we are supporting what? The theory of evolution as a whole. So what do? They use the evidence such as tools, weapons, language, artifacts. It is used to show what? The advances in the human brain. So this now shows what? How they may have evolved from one species to the next. So that shows evolution. So we use those tools that were found to show that these organisms, this is how they evolved. Remember, I explained that. So this is how you are going to answer it. You say you use that evidence, tools, language, weapons, whatever, to show that the human brain has developed. That development is what is going to give you that evolution. Now we are proving that. How long ago did the most recent common ancestor of the Homo erectus and the Homo heidelbergensis exist on Earth? Now you're going to look at these two. These two, where are they on your phylogenetic tree? You this one, Heidelbergensis, and then you have your erectus. So your erectus and your Heidelbergensis are here. But you want to go back and trace their ancestor. So the question is, says, how long ago did the most recent common ancestor of those two species, Homo erectus and Homo heidelbergensis, exist on Earth? So when you found their ancestor, then you are able to find what? The time. So how long ago was that? It was 3 million years ago, because you were able to find their common ancestor. This is where they both meet. That is where they both branched out. Now, explain a possible reason why Homo ergaster was placed between Australopithecus afarensis and Homo heidelbergensis on the model. So on this model, you find our Homo ergaster here. Here's our ergaster. So they say, why is it placed between Australopithecus africanus and Homo heidelbergensis? So these two, why? This is a very important question. So why is it placed in between? Now you think, if something is in between, remember your transitional species or your transitional fossil, because it carries what? It has characteristics of both what? The previous species and the next species. So let us take a look. Homo ergaster, it shows the characteristics of both Australopithecus afarensis and Heidelbergensis. Therefore, it is a transitional species. So we were correct. Remember, if something is in the middle, is in between, it is a transitional species because it carries characteristics of the preceding and the one that comes after. Right. Explain how the fossils of organisms that existed from 4 million years ago to present time are used to support the out of Africa hypothesis. Now, this is what we've just spoken about. What fossils were used to support the out of Africa hypothesis. So now this one, you're just going to run and fly with it and get your 4 marks. I see here they give it 3 marks, but in the exam last year, I think they gave it 4 marks. Make sure that you collect that 4 marks. Now, the fossil of Australopithecus were only found in Africa. And remember, we said nowhere else. The fossils of Homo habilis were only found in Africa. Then, the oldest fossil of Homo erectus were found in Africa. Then, the oldest fossil of Homo sapiens were found in Africa. Now, this suggests what? That the ancestors of the Homo sapiens originated in Africa. Now I see why it's 3 marks. Because it does not go back to Ardipithecus. Because Ardipithecus, remember, gave rise to the Australopithecus, is the oldest common ancestor. Right. So, but because they wanted it to come straight to the Homo sapiens, they will give you 3 marks. But if you had Ardipithecus in your answer, you would get your full 4 marks. Please make sure that you know all of this off by heart. These are also easy marks that you can use. 4 reasons of fossils to support the out of Africa hypothesis. Just know them off by heart. Please, please, please. Then you will get. Then this activity also says, state the out of Africa hypothesis. You state it like it is stated in the exam guideline. Please, we know that sometimes you like to use your way to understand. Sometimes you may lose marks by trying to explain something in your own words. You lose specific terms that are supposed to be there. If there's a definition in the exam guideline, use it as it is so that you are able to collect all the marks without losing the meaning or the essence of that definition. Right. The out of Africa hypothesis, we said, it says that modern humans originated in Africa and later migrated to other continents. Those are the 2 things that we want from you. You get your 2 marks. You are ready for the exam. Name the family. Remember the family. This is now the 3rd time this question is coming in today's activities. If you are not able to score on that question, please make sure that, please just make sure that you know this off by heart. And it shows you again that If you expose yourself to more question papers, the more familiar the questions are going to be, and the more they are not going to be intimidating to you. Make sure that you practice with your question papers. They are very important. The question papers that your teacher gave you, very important. Expose yourself to different ways of questions, or different ways in which the examiners ask you a particular topic. Right, the family, everyone can sing and say it is Harmony Day. Right. What genetic evidence is used to support the out of Africa hypothesis? Remember, mitochondrial DNA of the oldest female. That is where we say the oldest female mitochondria shows that it came from the east, where there in Kenya. Right, describe the fossil evidence. This is just a repetition of what we had. So this is where you get your full 4 marks. We say now, describe how fossil evidence is used to support the out of Africa hypothesis. This is how you are going to answer. You will say your Ardipithecus were found in Africa only. Your Australopithecines or Australopithecus were found in Africa only. So you must just remember the first are the 2 onlys. Then the other ones are the oldest. This is where now you talk about the oldest. The fossils of Homo habilis were found in Africa only. Then the oldest fossil of Homo erectus were found in Africa. Then the oldest fossil of Homo sapiens were found in Africa. So if you can just remember those 4, you will be ready for your exam. I think this brings us to the end of our presentation for today. Thank you so much. Please make sure that you study. Your exam is on the 16th and on the 19th of September. Your paper 1 is on the 16th. On the 19th, you're writing your paper 2. We wish you the best of luck. All the topics in your exam guideline were covered through these lessons. If you may have missed one, please make sure that you go to YouTube. You download. You make sure you catch up. Ask your teacher to show you the videos on or where you can catch up. You can catch up on a particular topic that you shall have missed. Please make sure that you study. You use your exam guidelines. You use your previous question papers, and all the best of luck from us to you. Thank you so much.